Hi there, friends. Good morning. It is 5:24 a.m., day 451. Here we are, streaming again. Isn't that lovely? For those of you who are watching, my name is Toby. I am 41 years old and I train to live an active, self-sufficient, and adventurous life. I do so by minding my sleep. Try to get between 7 and 9 hours in a night. Last night was 7 hours and 30, 40 minutes, closer to 8 than I've gotten in a while. That's good. So I'm happy about that. I try to mind what I eat. So I try to eat within my energy balance, which is around 21, 2200 calories. And I try to eat a lot of greens, a lot of vegetables throughout the day. And I try to eat 120 to 150 grams of protein to help hit my strength and muscle building and maintenance goals. I try to spend time with people I love and care about, try to do things that I enjoy, and generally try to live a stress-free life. All of this because I understand that we might live to be 80, 90, maybe even 100 with current advances, but those last years of life might be fraught with discomfort and disease, and large number of those health outcomes can actually be prevented by adopting a relatively healthy and active lifestyle, especially in our 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. We'll talk a lot more about the details throughout the stream. This week we're talking about how deterioration is inevitable, for example, with a couple of examples of that. The other reason is I'm a father of two young children. I'd like to set a good example, be an active part of their life, but also show them what an active life is and how they can model me in some ways to find their own ways of being active later on in life. This is about the way I feel, not about the way I look. I would like to feel fit, capable, and competent for whatever life throws at me. And I found that if I am physically able and fit, it's a lot easier to deal with all of the things that life will and can toss at us on a whim. That being said, friends, remember that we're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on. As the person we are today is going to get us to where we want to be tomorrow. So a bit of kindness probably going to go a long way. And there are enough people who want to put us down. So let's just lift ourselves up. And the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So while we do our mobility today, you can go ahead, say hi in chat, talk with me, ask me questions about my journey and experience. Looking to have a conversation about health and fitness. Or in general. You can ask me about life or any of the other things. I have some experience with the matter. Amen. So, we're a bit over halfway through the month of March. I hope it's been a good month for you. It's been a good month for me this week. The sun's been shining And I've noticed my general energy level on the sunny days has gotten a boost. And I think that is usually how it works with me. Sun's out, and I will be a happy camper. But that's over here in Amsterdam. Maybe the weather is playing a different game. Where you're at, it's also Thursday, so I think the short that came out today gives you like a 5 or 10 minute kettlebell workout that you can try to do at home. Remember, the weights are not as important as just spending the 10 minutes being active. But take a look and let me know what you think. In the meantime, today we're going to talk about how deterioration is inevitable. In other words, there comes a point in our life where rather than working to grow stronger, even though that is a completely valid outcome to be chasing, after we actually need to work and train to maintain our current strength, mobility, fitness, conditioning. Yeah. So basically, you spend your whole life doing GP, general preparedness training, because biologically speaking, after a certain age, we need to be smart about how we sleep, how we eat, and how we train to ensure that we maintain certain ranges of motion and abilities in life. That's why, this channel, if you're in your teens and 20s, well, you're probably interested in different things, maybe a bit about the health and wellness benefits, but probably more interested in growing strong, growing big, getting lean. It's the polite word, mating aspect of physical health and fitness. The way we look, how we feel, but also how others perceive us. And then after 30, we settle down, maybe. We get different responsibilities, like becoming a father, and becoming a man with responsibilities. I'm going to do this one just a little bit more. well, the perspective starts to shift. There are still benefits to working out the way I do in terms of the way I look. Generally, I look relatively athletic. But it is not the driver behind the effort. The driver behind the effort are the long-term health outcomes that I can derive from being consistent in my general health and fitness. So I have one goal every day, and that is to show up. To show up and do 30 minutes in the morning. If that turns into 45 or 60, I'm okay with that, but just to show up and do those 30 minutes. If I can show up and do those 30 minutes of work, it's a good start of the day, but I've also hit one of the key markers for the day. That is investing in my health and fitness. All right, so let's go back to why deterioration is inevitable. First, you need to understand a couple of things about why this conversation is important. The country I live in, 20 years ago, 600,000 or 700,000 people suffered diabetes, predominantly diabetes type 2. That number has increased to over 1.1 actually, recently. And one of the things we know about diabetes type 2 is that for a large portion of people, it is preventable or reversible. So rather than spending your life on medication and having to live with the burden of that disease, you could actually become or already start off by preventing yourself from developing that through an active lifestyle. But the trend is worrying because the trend is increasing in the sense that more and more people are developing chronic diseases like this, despite the positive development of having an overall increased life expectancy. And here's the thing though, there's no point in turning 90 if all you can do is sit on a chair and stare out a window, if there is a window, to stare out at all where you end up. Rather, just going to keep doing this one for an additional 40 seconds. Rather, you would want to get as old as possible with the ability to be self-sufficient, active, and able to set out and do the things you want to do at your pace. Now, that is a lifelong commitment. All right. And I think we sometimes underestimate what that actually means. Because we think that our current life is comfortable and good for us. But the more you start to think about it, and the more you try to figure out how to stay healthy and fit in current society, you realize that despite all the benefits, our current lifestyle in general, from the continuous availability of foods, whether they're ultra-processed or fresh, just the abundance of them, to the way we've organized our days between sleep and work and maybe a bit of play or socializing, to the ubiquitous availability of distraction and entertainment that steals away our sleep and our community and our ability to contribute, to be out amongst people, because instead we turn inward, spend time with ourselves. We need to see that the environment itself, just the daily routine of the world at the moment, is not geared towards us using our bodies, minds, and ability optimally. Doesn't mean we don't have a responsibility to ourselves to try and do something, but I think we need to be conscious and mindful that it is more or less a given that we will struggle with our health and our health markers, despite thinking that we might be relatively healthy, because when we look around us, we will see a lot of people in the same physical shape and size as we are. I can say we could say that that is quite all right, because on average we must be doing all right. But the truth is that we're not. The truth is that half the people in the country I live in are overweight, which directionally means that over time, probably going to get slightly heavier and heavier. We know that a portion of those people, I think 15%, is obese. And we know that obesity comes with deteriorating health markers. In most cases, not always, but in most cases. And certain health outcomes and struggles can be prevented if we take a long-term approach to an active lifestyle, or what I think they called combined lifestyle interventions, looking at the full picture: sleep, eat, train, connection. All of the things that we talk about on this channel, bit by bit, day by day, shaping our understanding of what it's going to take for us to be healthier and fit, and to stay healthy and fit throughout life. All right? It's not a given that we're going to get old. Let's take that as a starting point. Regardless of how much we enjoy working out and what we do, we can be unlucky. But what we can try to do is we can try to prevent as much of the deterioration that will come with age naturally, and simply make sure that we go through life longer and more active, taking back some of those years that we would otherwise spend in disease and discomfort. So we need a strategy, and we need to root that strategy in understanding. All right? So, with or without a strategy, the baseline is that we need to get serious about our sleep, because sleep and good sleep will solve half the problem. Meaning that when we sleep better, and I'll be doing a whole video on that sometime this month, but when we sleep better, we definitely improve a lot of our health markers. But not only that, we actually lay the foundation for other activities to pay off better. Okay? That's one that we just need to remember and keep in mind as we move through life. Is that as long as we're sleeping well, we're probably eating better and recovering better from exerting ourselves, or from the damage that living does to us throughout the day. It is the most regenerative state we can be in as human beings. All right? So just keep that in mind. Okay, good. So that's one. We need to eat better and smarter. I'm not going to hate on any particular type of food group. I think the most important priority is to take control of that energy balance and balancing what we consume versus what we use in a day. I don't know if it's true, but I heard an interesting statistic somewhere the other day, and that is that in the United States, for example, there are 4,000 calories of food available for each individual every day, whereas on average, for men and women this differs slightly, right? But for women, you might need 1,600 to 1,800. For men, you might need 2,000 to 2,400 to survive and to actually thrive and be doing well. So you could say that there is easily double the amount of food available than we need to consume, and this is not all tomatoes and cucumbers and broccoli, right? So you are going to find throughout the day opportunities to eat, even when you're not hungry, even when eating at this point does not actually enhance your chances of survival, finding a mate, but rather it sets you on a long, long path to actually harm yourself. All right? So I want you to think about food differently. I want you to consider that both sleeping and eating should be baseline priorities. And like I said, the most important one with food is bringing that energy balance to a good place. The second one is reconsidering protein intake in the overall balance of our diet. As in, are we consuming sufficient high quality protein from both plant and animal sources, or just plant sources, if you want, that are going to help us be as healthy as we possibly can. All right. And then the last one is activity. Activity is about movement throughout the day as much as it is about training. So one thing we need to realize about training is that it is 30 minutes in a day. And despite it having certain health and fitness benefits overall, which is absolutely laudable, it does not offset 8 hours of sleeping, 8 hours of sitting in the day. So if you have a sedentary occupation and you are doing your 3 times a week minimum guideline, 30-minute brisk walking and nothing else, but you are sitting a good 30 to 40 hours of the week, your health outcomes are not going to improve one bit. All right? We need to have a strategy throughout the day to move more frequently, whether that's walking around the office floor, up and down a flight of stairs, or doing 10 bodyweight squats every hour or 2 or 3 times a day, whatever the strategy is, we need to interrupt that pattern of sitting. And we would need to introduce a couple of moments throughout the day where our heart rate actually spikes. Sound is movement, right? And then there is training, which we would need to do with very specific goals in mind to build that cardiovascular capacity, i.e. to increase our heart and vascular system's ability to enable output and to build strength, muscle volume, lean mass that will serve us for a lifetime, and to maintain our range of motion in all planes of motion that we are capable of moving at, because impediments in mobility will definitely over time diminish the quality of life. All right? Now, why does all of this matter? Why does all of this matter in the conversation of deterioration being inevitable? Well, it's relatively simple and straightforward, my friend. Whether we like it or not, and do some toe yoga. This requires a lot of concentration because you need to move the large digits and the small digits separately. The large digits I can generally manage. Small digits prove to be a bit of a challenge. One foot, yes. Oh, this is so annoying. All right, so why does all of this matter in the face of long-term health, when considering long-term health? Look, deterioration is inevitable. At one point in life, probably after 30 somewhere, definitely after 40, and for sure after 50, if you don't do anything, your maximum aerobic capacity is going to start decreasing by about 1% per year or more. What does this mean? This means your heart and vascular system becomes less efficient, doesn't transport blood and oxygen as effectively to the places where it is required and needed. Okay? Ooh. Look at that. The good news is that that proper training can reverse that aging process in your heart. The vascular system can make it stronger, more flexible, more capable. But you do need to be active for that. But if you don't, the fact that you become older and wear out quicker, as in aren't as aerobically capable, therefore aren't as eager to go out for walks, to do things, that everything comes a bit harder. It's very simply biological deterioration. It's nothing to do with mindset or outlook on life. It's just very simple equation is you are less capable, so you begin to do less things. The world is that simple, people. Same thing about bone density. And bone density is an interesting factor here, right? Because we want to prevent osteopenia and osteoporosis, or in weak bones becoming brittle, because they are the structure that keeps us upright, stable, and protects our organs. Basically, our physical capacity. So, what you want to make sure you stress your bones, because by stressing our structure, it stays strong in a good way. But there's something else that we need to consider. That is our starting point here, because bone density, for the most part, is determined between age 0 and age 20-ish. It stays relatively stable for a number of years after. And then it starts to deteriorate. So again, if we keep stressing our bone and our structures with resistance training, they are likely to stay stronger longer. And finally, muscle and strength. Will deteriorate. We'll lose speed, volume, and eventually strength. So this is just the way our body works, right? When we talk about long-term health, at one point we go from building to maintaining and preventing deterioration. And the longer we can prevent deterioration, the bigger of a baseline we have when deterioration starts. the more likely it is that we put off a number of adverse health outcomes. The longer we put off our dependence on other people, the longer we will be able to do and live an active, self-sufficient, and adventurous life. So there are many different ways to approach living longer and healthier. But as a general framing, I think it's just important for us to understand. You're going to be walking around the perimeter of the mat. I think it's just important for us to understand that the better our baseline, in terms of health and fitness at the start of this journey, the better the chances are. YouTube Punk, good morning. Thanks for dropping by and saying hi. I hope you're doing well where you're at in the world. It's quiet on chat this morning. It's a nice, easy Thursday morning. Mobility, a little bit of core routine. How's life in Texas? I hope you're doing well. Oh, there we are. Doing well. Am I lost? Yeah, walking around trying to find my way in life. I figured if I started a YouTube channel and it gets really big, it will give me a sense of purpose and direction. So here we are. No, we were just talking about deterioration being inevitable, but I think you are aware of that part of the story of general health and fitness. So we want to bring ourselves to understand that we need to develop healthy habits at a very young age, because they will influence the starting points we have, not only in terms of our physical ability and health and conditioning, but also in terms of how well we understand how movement and activity impact our general health and well-being. Unfortunately, yeah, aren't we all at one point in our life? And I hope you're not injured and doing all right at the moment. Just a regular old plank. So, that's all I have for you today, friends. Working a bit on that stable core, making sure generally staying fit and healthy, not overdoing it, not underdoing it. 6-10 6:10 a.m. I think. Yeah, there we go. 6:10 a.m. Perfect time to start cleaning up and gearing up for another active day in paradise. For those of you who are watching, except for you YouTube punk, because you know what I'm about to say, my name is Toby. I'm 41 years old, and I train to live an active, self-sufficient and adventurous life. I do so by trying to mind my sleep, try to get between 7 and 9 hours in a night. Tonight was closer to 8, which is good. I try to mind what I eat. I try to eat consistently around my energy balance. Diabolic Native, hey, thanks for dropping by and saying hi. I hope you're doing well where you are in the world. My day's just starting, so I can let you know tomorrow how it was. And sometimes we have stressful days. I'd say, as long as on average we have as many non-stressful days as stressful days, maybe we're doing all right. And I hope you're doing well today. Some mystery sprain. I had that same thing with my foot, remember, over Christmas, like something just went wrong. All of those little tiny bones in the hand or foot joint that then decide to rebel for a bit, and the only thing you can do is wait for it to pass. There's not a lot else to be said for it. I try to mind what I eat, so I try to eat within my energy balance. I try to eat a lot of vegetables, and I try to eat 120 to 150 grams of protein in a day to help my muscle growth and strength goals. I showed up for strength training, so yesterday, Monday, and Fridays, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, with the kettlebells. So if you're interested in that, drop by in those days. I do conditioning, which also Monday and Friday. There's quite a good mix of strength and conditioning in the kettlebells. I go for a run on Sundays. I show up for mobility Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So that's something you are interested in. Join me on those days for the stream, and we go through a 20-30 minute mobility routine that I usually end off with some core exercises. I try to do things that I enjoy, spend time with people I love and care about, and generally live a stress-free life. Doesn't always work out. To your point, Diabolic Native, there are sometimes days where, well, we have to deal with some stresses, but generally I'm able to organize my life to be relatively stress-free, for which I am grateful. We're good just the way we are. We've got to love ourselves before we can move on, friends. And the only way to get anything done is by showing up and doing the work. So for that, I will see you tomorrow. YouTube punk, take care of that hand. Diabolic Native, thanks for dropping by. Be well for the rest of the day. Get a good night's sleep. And remember, friends, subscribe. See you tomorrow.